affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Good evening, folks. This is Diamond with the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, bringing you another edition of the Inconvenient Truth, prepping for the Grand Solar Minimum on Revolution Radio, Freedom Slips. Today's date is August 8th. It's 8 p.m. Mountain Time where I'm at. I don't know where you're at, but hopefully Ice Age farmer Christian Westbrook is on the line with me, and we're about to start a 2-hour discussion about preparedness and the Grand Solar Minimum. And if you watch his channel recently, he said he's all in, and we're going to be talking about that. You can find Christian at iceagefarmer.com, Ice Age Farmer on Twitter, Ice Age Farmer on YouTube, Ice Age Farmer on 100 other places. Christian, are you listening to my nonsense?
I absolutely am. Thanks for having me on, Diamond.
Thanks for coming on. A lot of people are waiting for this show. I had some problem with my YouTube last night. It got split in pieces. I put in a second little piece, and almost nobody asked any good questions. We'll get to those crappy questions in a minute, but I'm sure we have a lot to talk about. Is there anything you want to say before we get started?
There is, Diamond. Let me just be honest. This whole past week, I have been burning with an energy that is beyond anything I've ever felt. It is an urgency that has been impressed upon me. And I wanted to get on the show and be relaxed and just have a conversation and, talk about things. But this past week, I've had a series of realizations that I want to tonight share with you and your audience. And it's go ahead.
Sounds better than a bad rash.
I sure hope so. Things were already moving so astonishingly quickly, right? We were seeing the massive crop losses due to the drought across Europe, hitting like 50 to 60%. USDA constantly revising estimates down week after week for the wheat yield. The hail insanity, the volcanic activity picking up. It's just like, all the stuff we talk about all the time is increasing off the charts. But the banning of the entirety of all of Infowars' hosts and their shows really struck a nerve for me. That's a turning point that needs to be discussed. And by the way, it stopped me at any time, Diamond, especially if I'm breaking up. Among the things in the last year I did to prepare for the Grand Solar Minimum was relocate my family. So I've put a lot of distance between myself and San Francisco, where they keep the internet in a cage on Folsom Street. So my connection, suffice to say, here is a little less robust than it was. So I hope I'm coming through clearly.
It sounds crystal clear. I haven't had one breakup yet.
Terrific. So that the banning of these shows, the commencement of censorship on the main sites by these huge tech companies, it's a Rubicon being crossed. It's an inflection point, one with no return. We're seeing the internet broken. Within a day of this, it's not even a slippery slope. It's not even fair to say that. Within a day, there are sitting U.S. senators who are tweeting, "We need to delete more hateful channels. American democracy is at stake." It's Orwellian and insane. And you better believe that fake news is on the chopping block, and you definitely better believe that climate deniers are on that block.
It's like a guillotine. Yeah, well, let's just talk about, are you specifically talking about, I only know Infowars, and so all of the Infowars sub-channels, so to speak, were also taken down?
That's right. And you better believe that they are. They've already started. You've probably noticed this. They are identifying videos that are talking about climate change and are classifying climate denialism. And they put their little blurb down below. This is new as of last month. There was an article, somebody commented.
I was flattered weeks ago when my first blurb came up.
That's right. So they have already taken steps to identify you. They already know the channels that are climate deniers, and they are already calling for us to be censored. To see the tech giants coming down in this, all in the same day, in this orchestrated fashion, it's really staggering, man. It's hard to believe that we are already this far down the line. We knew it was coming. That the surprise is that we're here now, right?
Yeah, well, I believe that that's the nail in the coffin. Now, these are private companies, YouTube, Facebook, etc. YouTube has the right to take any channel down at any time for any reason. It says it in the contract. It's not necessarily the quelching of free speech in my mind. It's just a huge multinational corporation that loses respect in the public eye because, in essence, they are quelching free speech, and that's going to be a black eye to like YouTube and other things. They're going to lose millions of dollars by doing this.
Yeah, but it's not about the money. It's never. In fact, YouTube itself has never been about the money. They burn billions of dollars a year. It is about control of the information.
Yeah.
It's all we're talking about here. They don't care about revenues. For years already, I want to point this out. For years already, we've seen calls to jail climate deniers, to kill climate deniers. There was a play that was titled that. They had to walk that one back. You and I have both had to spend our time appealing these things and people flagging our videos, and we just sort of think of that as the cost of using that platform. But this is the week where that turns into, this is it. These platforms are now yielding to the desires of the, you could argue that they're to the desires of this unthinking masses, but the reality is that they are enforcing the agenda of the cryptocracy, of an establishment here.
So there are other ways that we can get our message out. I'm not particularly worried. Everyone knows OppenheimerRanch.org. If they were to shut me down, I would just make my own home videos and put them up there every night.
I think that's a little bit short-sighted. I think that these people have much better control over the flow of information than you're assuming when you make that statement. And I would add that there aren't, half of the point here is to make sure new people are getting the word every day. And so if they have cut off your ability to reach new audiences, then that's game over.
Yeah, we have to think of new strategies to reach the masses. Have you thought of any new strategies?
I think it's beyond that, right? What is in place already for climate deniers is exactly the same script that was in place for Alex Jones. We are dangerous people, especially the climate denying people that are also have their own fake news shows. These are very dangerous people, and we are dangerous. We are very dangerous to their agenda. But now things are different. Now these platforms are yielding and doing whatever they can, openly just throwing away the First Amendment, as you said, scrubbing. But more than that, they're scrubbing people and their content and their communities completely out of existence.
Do you agree with everything Alex Jones says and does?
No, and I don't need to.
Yeah. Do you think that his type of message and the types of things that they're banning him for are similar to things that we talk about? Or do you think that it's completely different, where we provide factual information, historical information? We don't make up stories and point people out for you to go target because they're global warmists to go kick their ass. We're not. We're very different in the way that the Grand Solar Minimum community in general reports on what's happening. I believe there's a little bit more conspiracy theory, and he pushed the buttons of these private companies. I don't think that we are, in general, pushing their buttons right now. Do you?
I think I think we are a direct threat to the agenda, beyond the anthropogenic global warming agenda, although certainly to that one, but that is part of a larger and deeper agenda. I don't think, to your question, that we're similar to Alex Jones, nor do I agree with everything he says. But in fact, I think it's very complex. I think there are plenty of people who would argue that, of course, he's a controlled opposition figure put there as the lightning rod so that this kind of censorship can't start. Because, in fact, let me skip ahead of it, because these people are chomping at the bit to shut us down. Look at what's going on in the world, right? It's obvious. It's totally obvious. If somebody with a rational voice comes to you, like we do on our channels, and presents the facts, it is clear to a thinking person. And that's why it's urgent to them, because we're very dangerous, that we must be taken down. Media Matters, about a week ago, was talking about, this is from an article, Facebook has a climate denial problem. And I'm going to read just a little bit. Facebook, well known as a breeding ground for misinformation, has a particular problem with decimating false and misleading messages about climate change science. The platform spreads climate-denying videos and other posts, hosts climate-denying ads, and even officially partners with climate-denying media outlets and organizations like Fox News. A recent video promoting false arguments against climate change got more than 5 million views on Facebook. I mean, they're freaking out. This is unacceptable. We can't let this happen. The
Well,
video is Why Climate Change is Fake News with Mark
our
McDonough.
solar shutdown Facebook page, which has been up for years, over a year ago, and got banned. Now, we're not really, solar shutdown is a stretch for climate denial. It's very sciencey because we're science-based. We're plasma physicists, working over there through the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, and we've been banned from boosting any posts because I used to boost posts to gain subscribers. We can't boost anything, and I've been banned and blocked from sharing for a week at a time, dozens of times, simply because of what I share. This has been going on for over a year, so it's nothing new, but it certainly is ramping up, and I agree.
Yeah, we've heard, again, an inflection point. Here's the boom from last week from Media Matters. This is a public article. Facebook needs to come to terms with the fact that there's an objective reality. They should not do business with Fox News. They should not allow What's Up With That to buy ads calling CO2 the gas of life. This is deceptive, false, and misleading. That's against the terms of service. These users should be banned. And then just for a little punch.
CO2 isn't the gas of life? Is that what they're claiming?
That's correct. And then it's the punchline, right? No, so that's why I'm saying you can't. When you say I'm not concerned because my channel is science based, that is exactly why you should be concerned. These people are.
You realize how effing stupid the people that are running these companies are if they don't know that CO2 is plant food?
Well, the punchline here. Zuckerberg has expressed concern about climate change, but he does not walk the walk. He's not using the immense power of his platform to halt misinformation about climate change.
Well, maybe Zuckerberg knows CO2 is plant food.
To the contrary, Facebook is enabling Diamond to spread climate denial on multiple fronts. And then combating fake news is key to combating climate change. Diamond, there was an editorial in Nature Communications journal last month. Fake news threatens a climate literate world.
Now, who is the determiner of this fake news? I wonder. And at what point do the masses, the sheeple, the 80%, at what point, and how do they buy into that? How do they blatantly buy into someone else's opinion on what is real and fake news?
Well, it's really dangerous, the situation there, as far as those, I was calling them a weaponized group of degenerates, but that's really, it's really a little judgmental, and they are victims of mind control. So I try to bear that in mind. But it's worth pointing out why these people are, in fact, so dangerous. When you are given the belief, when you're told by establishment scientists who wouldn't lie to you, when they are telling you that there is no future, then unless you go kill Trump and kill and jail climate deniers and take away their YouTube channels today, never mind that they would actually still lack any viable solution in their weird reality. That's what I'm saying. There's no critical thought going on.
So the reality, their solution to catastrophic global warming is to kill people that talk about real climate science.
Yeah,
now, how is that proper planning? Explain that to me, Christian.
It's certainly not rational at all, but it's sadly happening. In fact, just earlier, some guy shot his neighbor for being a Trump supporter. So it's past a dangerous point. This is really crazy. You may not have seen that because it was only on banned fake news sites that are shadow banned, like your Christopher Ice Age 2050 was enjoying a shadow ban. So,
I'm sure we're all shadow banned. I didn't even check because I don't care.
Yeah. You have to realize these dangerous people are dangerous because they're being told there is no future. I mean, you saw the Guardian's report, was it yesterday? It's too late. Earth has passed the tipping point. We face a fiery future.
Now, here's the nonsense. They claim this catastrophic sea level rise, 207 feet in 100 years. In order to get 207 feet of sea level rise, there can be no remaining ice on the surface of Earth, which that's total nonsense. Which is why last night in our update, we played the last 40 years of Arctic ice ebb and flow every year. And you can notice absolutely no change whatsoever to the naked eye if you're just watching it. And they're claiming that that at some point, it hasn't happened yet for decades, that it's all going to go away, which is an impossibility. If you speak to a geologist, there is no evidence at all for that. None. It's a complete fairy tale, 100%.
Yeah, it's nonsense, and they're laughing all the way to the bank with it. It's actually, to be precise, it's a slice of trauma-based mind control writ large across the entire population of Earth. This is MK Ultra scaled up all the way. It doesn't get any bigger than that. But to these people, there is no hope for future, and that means there's no accountability. That's it. There's a miserable existence when you have no hope. In fact, we should take that to heart. I think we should let it underscore the need for us all to just an aside here. We need to remain positive at all times.
Right. Now, I would like to delve into the psyops, the brainwashing, and how successful it is that they were able to go from global warming to climate change around 3.5 years ago. And the climate change can be used now for everything, and it still means global warming. Even though the majority of the climate change issues currently are cold springs, heavy snows, increased hail, these are anomalous things that are not necessarily caused by warming.
Yeah, and your problem here again is that you're hoping that people actually know the facts or will look for the data themselves, and that's simply not true. The media constantly presents this everything is baking, there's fires everywhere, it's the hottest ever on Earth, blatantly. And so the PSYOP is, I would say it's very successful. Their hopelessness is worsening. At the same time, the descent into madness that we've been observing has forced a lot of people along that path to step back and reevaluate what's going on. And so that means that's the good part here, is that means there are more minds open to receiving this truth and looking at that data to see what's going on, because I have full faith if they look at the data, they'll get to the right conclusions. I have that same faith that you do. I just know they're not seeing the data right now. And that is why it is so important that the establishment censors this truth as soon as possible, because minds are opening and they got to scrub it. And having already broadcast for over a decade now, jail climate deniers, silence them, get them out of here. This is deeply programmed into that cult. And so they are salivating at that thought. In fact, as we got on the air tonight, I'm clicking into this now from BuzzFeed News. It's just a blurb about Wikipedia is helping YouTube to combat climate denialism. Google, which owns YouTube, has struggled to excise misinformation from its platforms. The blurb policy, according to them, this is really informative, is targeting videos about vaccines, so anti-vaxxers, climate change, and UFOs.
Yeah, well, didn't the CIA admit that there are UFOs?
I think that one is thrown in there to make the other two look ridiculous, right? That's the discrediting agent there.
Always.
Yeah. One final observation on the way that this censorship played out over the last week, and that is that LinkedIn joined in. So this one really hits home for at least for folks in the tech industry. LinkedIn is it's your digital resume at this point. It doesn't even allow you to publish content, so it doesn't really make sense that they would jump on the bandwagon anyway, except as sort of the message of this is the Chinese social credit score system coming over and being grafted onto the internet at large. You are totally rendered an unperson if you deviate from the message, the acceptable message. And this is a problem, right? If this is why I among the reasons that I would say I'm all in, because I wholly expect we've crossed this line now. You and I are out there. We are known as very dangerous to this agenda, and we're in the crosshairs, my friend.
Well, I'm shaking. I mean, if you could see me over here.
I can tell. So you asked about alternatives, and speaking to that question, the Drudge called Facebook and YouTube internet ghettos. I would agree that's absolutely true. And to your question earlier of why don't we just hop somewhere else? Unfortunately, something else has been happening over the last, decade or so, where big tech has been increasingly making it impossible to build a new service without using something from them. One of they call them cloud services, right? So if you don't send an email from their cloud service, so it's Microsoft or Amazon or one of them, it's fine. As long as you go through one of them, then your message will get marked as spam. Things like this. It just makes it very difficult to do business. And they've turned, through this process, they've turned the entire infrastructure of the internet into a ghetto. They've done it across.
I went over to Mike Adams' Real Video and signed up, and I can't even use it. The platform sucks. It's like a tweet of information I'm allowed to put below my video, which is not going to help the people learn anything. it's a very deceptive site, and I wasted my time there. And Steemit is growing very slowly, but there's just not the traffic that we get and the growth we get on YouTube. And I just want to share facts with you. I'm going to say 6 to 8 months ago, lots of my videos were getting demonetized, but they've changed over the platform kind of. And recently I haven't been demonetized at all, and it's been smooth sailing. What's happening with your channel?
Well, I definitely have people hitting the report as misleading and deceptive content, which they're about to translate into a terms of service violation, and I would expect to terminate our channels any day now. And that's why I'm having this conversation. Really
but
quickly,
you don't
so
have
on
strikes or anything, right?
Negative on Real.video, I would agree that's a real disappointment, especially given how much buzz it was able to generate within the the community, the alt community. Beyond just having beyond being a terrible site, it also weighted, right? They have an editorial team approve every upload, so that's just totally, it doesn't scale, and it doesn't even make sense for free speech. And then they added ads for their own T-shirts to the front of your video.
It's for them to sell shirts, not for you to give your message out.
So that was a real disappointment. Even if it hadn't been, though, there would be a problem with any system, and this is what I was talking about, that has a central point of control. So even if you had the capital, and I mean a lot, right? Like I said, YouTube is burning multiple billions of dollars a year. Even if you wanted to have that money and wanted to build your own platform, you can't just go to this old model with a central server that everyone goes to publish and view and comment. And you have to decentralize these things. And blockchain is among the technologies that could be used. And that's like you were saying, that's why I was optimistic around DTube and Steemit and hoping to see that really blossom.
Well, I can't upload to DTube anymore. It doesn't let me upload my stuff because of my editor, and it sucks. But I can still easily publish on Steemit, so I'm going to continue to go there. Yeah,
I would say, that's exactly right. Is wherever we can get these things out is where we should publish. James Corbett, whose work I respect, recommends BitChute. And so I've been checking that one out. I don't have a solution for this. And certainly for building a new platform overnight, I don't think anyone has a solution. And I do think...
How is BitChute?
I really haven't checked it out yet.
Okay. So there is hope. We don't have time really to look at all this, but there could be something on the horizon. Think positive.
Yeah, I do think the need is pressing, and for now, I think the best we can do is just keep publishing, maybe hit DTube, and minimally keep things mirrored on a privately hosted server, and ask and hope that from there people spread the materials themselves.
And I also believe that the powers that be in the mainstream media are not necessarily one and the same. The people controlling the net global warming narrative and the people that want Lee Wheelbarger to inform them on a regular basis with a monthly update on what's happening with the grand solar minimum, the waning magnetosphere, and the magnetic excursion that we're experiencing. Those people are aware that global warming is a tax scam, and those people are in the military and higher ups. So there's a certain group of people well aware of what's going on, and they may support us in some way in the near future. Do you have hope for that?
I would be thrilled to. I guess I wouldn't say that I'm holding out any hope. No, I think that at this point, the whole philosophy I try to walk is that we are the hope for us, right? We are the ones we've been waiting for, and we got to build our solutions from the ground up. And I'm not waiting for any white hat or Q or Trump or anybody. I like a lot of the stuff I'm seeing, and that would be fantastic, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't need some white hat to show up and do anything, but I think it's unwise to depend on anything.
Yeah, that's true. Now, you've been reporting, as well as I, but you specifically, on the narrative change, which has happened over the past year with the introduction of grand solar minimum, mini ice age, global cooling. So the mainstream, albeit the fringe elements, have embraced the idea somewhat.
I don't know that I would say they've embraced it. I have seen some coverage of it here and there, but so too, as I said before, have I seen the world is burning up. We've passed the tipping point. It's the hottest year. And I mentioned this in videos. They're saying everything you can conceive out of some corner of whatever mouth. It's being said, and it's just creating a complete sea of misinformation and blinding people so that
the last ice age was caused by global warming.
Yeah. So it's really hard for people to get oriented when they are getting hit by all of these conflicting messages from different directions, and what were supposed to be credible sources don't seem to be anymore. So they just shut down. In a lot of cases, people just shut down. They can't parse it, and they give up.
They go back to the dream world.
That's their hope, right? That's the hope, is that we just put people to sleep. We don't let them figure out. We'll tell them everything, and they won't know what to believe. I mean, this is exactly what's being done. And the only reason that they now have to up the game and totally remove the truth, our channels, I would say, from the equation, is because things are getting so severe that people don't allow that confusion to just, that they actually persist in that search. What's actually going on here? So this is that turning point. This is the Rubicon. So look, Diamond, this is everything we talk about is absolutely vital information that needs to be understood by all conscious humans to understand reality. I very much believe that. Or else I wouldn't have started my channel. We all need to know these things to thrive in the future. And so if we can't depend on these platforms or build a platform, we at least have to build some infrastructure for our own message, for our own shows. And the services that I've stood up so far, the Ice Age Farmer map.iceagefarmer.com and wiki.iceagefarmer.com, are on a privately hosted server where no one can touch them. And I've done that deliberately from the beginning for this reason. I also just started forum.iceagefarmer.com. It's a very basic setup. Probably looks about like real.video. I'm not a graphic person, but we need these things set up now. And so that's why I am going ahead and launching it. Ultimately, though, I think any of these digital things is ephemeral. It's going to be wiped out at some point. And so you need offline materials. You need to download and print, and don't take this information for granted. At some point, I wouldn't even bank on tiny house channels being there or herbal remedies being there. If it's a threat to the profits of the pharmaceutical companies, hopefully these things are a bit further down the road. But again, we've passed the turning point. All these things are on the table now. So if we're printing pamphlets that we can drop, or flyers to flyer, I'm working on a little printed primer, just a PDF that you can toss around or leave on a USB key somewhere. I think we can print off the documents by James Marusek from Bread and Butter.
Those I handed those out in mass at Observing the Frontier. Hundreds of people took those.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. I was going to say you got to cache these things and have them on hand so that as the situation progresses and more and more people start asking questions, you will have the answers there.
Yeah, exactly. You need a packet of information. It has to be hard copy. Systems are only going to stay up for as long as they can. I don't believe the system will deteriorate all at once. The only scenario that would happen is a massive CME, EMP, or solar flare. That's a low probability, but there's a very high probability that the infrastructure will crumble slowly and that the powers that be will continue to rally the troops, lasso up humanity into smaller and smaller clusters into their unquote smart cities where they make bleeding burgers out of whatever in the laboratory, right, and just to keep people happy.
Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed the transhumanist agenda, smart cities, fake meat. Yeah, I'd actually like to go there next. Let me just mention there's a need also for offline community. This is what you're getting at. These things are temporary. Whether that takes the form of, one Dr. Daniel, I saw a comment on your video, mentioned the ham radio nets, or even I think using shortwave would work too. I know you and Lee talked about building ham radio rigs a bit. I would encourage people to consider doing so. I built a little repeater here and picked up a tower for it. I need to build a proper stand for it before I put that thing up. But it's a great idea in fact, you have to get this stuff running now before you lose the grid and the infrastructure that will allow you to build up your networks around you, right? So establish your ham nets.
If you have the radios and solar panels and stuff, then you have the chance to do it.
Yeah.
You don't have it, it's not going to happen.
It's really an extremely valuable thing to have. That information flow a neighbor could let you know of a hailstorm that's coming in or anything like that, and buy you even just a few minutes to cover stuff up or take things. French champagne farmers are paying millions of dollars for 4 minutes of advance warning for hail. So the information is very valuable.
Well, what do they do? Put up a special shield?
These were
the net, Jimmy.
it was these champagne farmers that were launching, if I recall correctly, balloons with aerosols that were, it was claimed to actually stop the hail from destroying their vineyards. Pretty advanced.
Well, there's also this resource I just came across called Interactive Hail Maps, which is a company that's exploding in size over the last 2 years. And it allows contractors to actually show up in communities the day before the hail destroys all the houses. So they're just sitting on the roads waiting. And as soon as it's done, they drop their cards in everyone's mailbox, and it's helping people become millionaires because they have the advantage.
Yeah.
And it's proving to us what we know and what our channels are for. That the predictions are coming true. We are not making anything up, and that hopefully more people that come into our channels are, immediately stricken by our narrative as being exactly what they were looking for, explaining what they was not being explained.
The missing link. That's right. And I don't know. I mean, I hope somebody else out there has better solutions for how to get around this censorship issue or what's going on. I think this is clutch. But having acknowledged the the imminent censorship of all climate realism and potentially rational thought, which is, I think, imminent. That's why I'm really pushing the boundaries of Ice Age Farmer tonight and of this show of yours. To be candid, I'm pushing my own boundaries a little bit. It's not entirely comfortable for me to talk about like some of the stuff we're getting into, but it's just now absolutely the most pressing thing to discuss. I think I perhaps have done, I don't know, maybe we should have widened the scope from the get-go. We know about the crop losses. We've heard about the volcanoes. We've talked about the greenhouse. Given the severity and the immediacy of the situation now, we also need to look, I would say, more deeply at the censorship and the AGW agenda. And we need to know what the perpetrators are there and what's going on. We have to do that. We have to look into that with the same open-mindedness, the same receptivity to whatever the data shows us, and the honesty that allowed us to reach the correct conclusions about the climate. So if we step back, if we bearing that in mind and stepping back, I want to put it all in perspective. It's not a surprise that big tech is doing this, is clamping down. We expected it all along, right? The surprise, as I said, is just that it's happening now, that we're already this far down the line. But we knew that the military-industrial complex, the CIA, In-Q-Tel, Tavistock-funded big technology companies, we know they were founded, in fact. This whole agenda was first to lure them in, and then once everyone was in their internet ghettos, turn up the social engineering, squash all opposition to their agenda, in fact, to their reality. They're building a new reality. This isn't some lol Democrats, Trump derangement syndrome political thing, the censorship that we're seeing now. It is the master plan. And it ties right into the AGW, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 UN framework for totalitarian superstate and depopulation. Again, we're not talking about a political agenda here. It's much deeper. And I do consider this knowledge, what we're talking about, I do consider this part of prepping for the grand solar minimum. Your show's covered the beans, the bullets, the Band-Aids, and thank God, right? Thank God for Lee Wheelberger's extensive knowledge. Thank God for Anita Bailey literally writing the books on self-sufficient homesteading for years before becoming aware of grand solar minimum and writing Cold Times, bringing it all together. Just as an aside, I think it's remarkable to see, it's really, call it a synchronicity or just the grand design, to see these amazing people, these key individuals from such different areas of life and vastly different experiences coming online and sharing their expertise right now, right when it's most needed. That's crazy.
This guy Darby showed up, and I'm going to tell you, it's 8 years ago, I was a director of fundraising for the American Civil Liberties Union. One of my canvassers every morning would say, "Top of the Darby" to you, because I lived in Upper Darby. But then this guy Darby came into my life yesterday, not expecting it. I'm frazzled because I have so much going on. I don't have time to hang out with people for hours on end. I have so much to do. But this guy came into my life and changed it. And he is a resource that we can all use. He's already built sustainable communities in Central Texas. He, in fact, built a tiny house out of trash in just 72 hours right before he got here, which I shared. It's that ship. And he has a lot to share, and he wants nothing in return. So he's made his money, he's got everything he needs, and he has warehouses full of recycled materials, and he wants to teach people and show people, you know, how to take nothing and make it something. And I remember very vividly something you said, and it sticks with me because it's the most important thing that you can really take with you into the future, because it's non-physical, it's skills. And you said that you should be so confident that when you wake up in the morning and all your greenhouses are crushed and your house is smashed by hail, that you say, oh, geez, I guess we have to start building a stronger one. And that's where it begins. It's not cry, what are we going to do? It's let's get started. That's
right. Yeah. It's like it ties back to the, was it the Wayne Dyer quote you said? When you eliminate doubt, you finally get to abundance. And when just put doubt down. But I really hope everyone hearing this looks at Lee Wilbarger and Anita Bailey and all these people stepping up, because we all have to do that right now. This is the time. All of us have something unique, some experience, some knowledge, whatever it is in our past. And it might not even seem entirely relevant, but right now it is. You just have to find those puzzle pieces and put them together. So yeah, thank God for everyone doing that and for your work. It's vitally important to get this information out there. But it's equally vital, I believe, for us in order to survive and thrive, like as a species, as humanity. We really need now, before all of this information goes offline, we have to understand and spread the word about the nature of what I was calling the cryptocracy, the hidden rulers. They have many names. Some of the newer ones, New World Order, Deep State, or the older ones like Illuminati. It just, people turn off when they hear these things already, right? They're like, oh, this is conspiracy theory. I don't want to talk. But truth is stranger than fiction. And I would be, if I didn't talk about this because I was worried that people would think I was a conspiracy theorist, and then they wouldn't think the grand solar minimum was new. You know, it's past time for that. They're turning off the channels. We got to get this all out there. We have to understand that this cryptocracy has its origins in Luciferian, Fabian socialism, a collectivist, globalist society. We have to understand that their intention is to use the food scarcity you and I are recognizing in advance. It's looming ahead. They know it. They're going to use that to consolidate their power over everyone. And
now, do you know about David Icke's ideas?
Sure.
And do you know about the recent documents that were found that he has now followed up on many recent talks?
I don't know.
Well, these are just all biblical writings, just more information like the Book of Enki and other things like that. But do you think that it is a transdimensional entity that is controlling this evil group, the Illuminati, the Deep State, whoever they are? Because they actually act inhuman, conscienceless. They're sociopathic.
It is, this is something where, and I always try to distinguish, we've entered somewhere where I can only speculate, right? Everything else I've told you is open writings. This is absolutely reality. There is no arguing it. Now we're entering into a realm of speculation. I almost hesitate to even do it because I want to keep this strictly what we can point at and say this is fact. But you are
agree.
Right. Yeah.
But there are answers out there to be found. But if we just work on the facts, what we've been reporting on, the need to prepare, and the fact that there is an agenda, that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it goes back to that is part of my sphere of influence. I'm definitely very my sphere of interest. I'm very interested in who these people are and why they're doing these insane things, but I don't seem to have any power over that. My sphere of influence remains here, where I can do exactly as you said, prepare for the future. And hope that to spread the word is the other large component of how I spend my time, right? So these people are, I think it's fair to say they're out of their mind. They are working to craft what they describe as a technocratic, a technocracy controlled by little managing people, a transhumanist society, a future without gender, without any natural food, and so forth. It's kind of a mouthful and a lot to take in. It's extremely dystopic. In fact, if you just think of all the dystopic movies, it really gets you sort of thinking in the right direction. But again, it's all out there in the open in their writings.
Well, it's like as if they're creating, taking our species and modifying it to become a parasite for control mechanisms. Mm-hmm. So, but if it gets to such a parasitic level where they control where the food comes from and everything, then they have total control over the population.
Yeah. And if we don't understand this, if we refuse to look honestly at this, the same way we look at, so far at climate honestly, then we're missing it. Our survival and the survival of our progeny depends on us keeping this knowledge top of mind. That's why I bring it up here. It's part of the permaculture principles, right? Care of the future. And with this censorship already now starting, you better believe I'm going to be yelling this from the rooftops. It is just as true and just as relevant as our main message. Otherwise, at best, we risk going through all this trouble and emerging from an extremely difficult geophysical period without any history or context of where we are going. And we'll walk right, having forgotten that, we'll walk right into their enslavement plans. It's not.
Yeah, well, the sheep are the sheep. Now, all the people are celebrating that their 401ks are swelling. The stock market is at all-time highs. But that's all coming to an end immediately. And everyone's futures will diminish instantaneously overnight. And then where are we? That's the control mechanism. Humans, if you're listening, you were not born onto this earth to be a slave for someone that you don't like that much so that you could take 2 weeks of vacation every week. That is not your purpose. And unfortunately, everyone is buying into that. If we all just stopped, we could change everything. The control is amazing.
It is. It is.
And it's not an easy thing to do, to unhook, to unplug. It takes years because we're patterned. And some people are much deeper stuck than others. Many of us who have awakened, so to speak, have gone through very difficult life experiences, which enabled us to see the light, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, people come to different truths in a number of different ways, and I spent a lot of time over the last decade or so thinking about that because it was so strange to me that I spent some part of my life like at one awareness level and then had a series of experiences that really just brought me into a totally different level of awareness.
Absolutely. It's like within a year, everything you believe is completely different. It takes about a year, but it's just so amazing. I experienced the same thing 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And there are multiple, there's multiple ways. There are economic awakenings, right? When you're like, oh my God, it's all debt. There's the Federal Reserve. There's different ways that people go through the progress of the huge web of lies that we find ourselves in. The deceit is everywhere. So it's pretty crazy. But getting back down to what we're talking about here, the collapse of the food system is absolutely baked into the plans of these people. And it's integral, in fact, to the whole plan for their transhumanist future. If you think about it, food it's not just, what Kissinger says, it's not just a means of control. It's also a vital part of who we are as humans. It's our culture, it's our history, it's our traditions, what we could grow, where we came from. There's a story to food. And so, in order to fully strip us of our humanity, which is their goal, and our history, and our culture, you have to change and eliminate our food.
Yeah, eliminate the seed, you eliminate the tradition. They've already eliminated the true history. I mean, we barely know what's happened in the last 100 years. 90% of the history in the last 100 years is facts. Less than 20% from 1900 to 1800 is facts. And then before 1800 is anyone's guess.
Yeah, not to mention, previous cycles of civilization, which would actually really help people clue into what's going on now. But well, so the globalists have openly discussed the use of food scarcity, like I just said, Henry Kissinger, for hundreds of years now. One example, digging back a little bit deeper, because I do want to establish that this is in the script. It's part of the plan. H.G. Wells, which most people associate now with fiction, right? War of the Worlds. He also wrote Island of Dr. Moreau, where humans were genetically modified and merged with animals. And it was some
love that movie. Scared the out of me when I was a kid.
Some nice predictive programming even back then, and in the 40s. Less well known was that he was a member of the Fabian Society. He was also putting out nonfiction, including the amazingly titled New World Order, which really makes it pretty easy. Thanks. He also wrote World Brain Theory, where humans gradually give up their individuality to become part of the collective, the global mind. So this is a guy, H.G. Wells, who's perfectly comfortable in his works, openly calling for socialism, openly calling for eugenics, for the employment of extreme population control methods. I enjoyed this quote: "We have to overcome the individual's disdain for self-sacrifice." Are you kidding? We have to. Okay, so this is a guy who obviously is a heavy collectivist, heavy socialist. Anything that's individualist is disgusting to him. I hope people are familiar with and at least look into like the opposite of this kind of thing, which would be voluntarism or agorism, arguably, but that's a different subject. H.G. Wells was among these crazy other things that he called for, is something that actually sounds a little more familiar now. H.G. Wells calls for a world encyclopedia. This would serve as a, quote, scheme for the reorganization and reorientation of education and information throughout the world, and no less. That's from page 17 of World Brain Theory. Go ahead.
Sounds like Wikipedia.
Hey, Diamond, does that sound like Wikipedia to you? Exactly. Wikipedia, which has not allowed, for the record, any of my or others' edits, which, despite following all rules and referencing and all these things, all those ridiculous maze of Wikipedia rules.
One of our subscribers showed us that they bought some textbooks from their local library that had been, whatever it's called, removed from circulation. They were all on quaternary glacial geology, which is the truth.
It's remarkable. So yes, Wikipedia is, that's it. That's what it is. It is their instrument for the reorganization of education and information throughout the world. That's why we can't get any information about global cooling in there, even though there are headlines, as you correctly pointed out, about global cooling both being caused by volcanoes, beyond that being caused by the solar minimum, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is current events, but we can't let that in Wikipedia because that is where people go to find out what's going on, and that's how we're going to reorganize and reorient right here. So doesn't that sound a lot like what we were saying earlier, what we're seeing now, tech companies being used, as they said, quote, to inoculate society against climate denialism and fake news?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, they've, net neutrality is gone. Now the corporations can throttle anyone they want at any time. Everything's being monitored, and it's only going to continue to get worse as these freedoms, which we never really had, unravel before your very eyes, one at a time, under the guise of security. and people buy into that. It's insane.
It's the same people. It's the same agenda. It's the same 100 years of putting this forward, talking about the collectivist, genderless, transhumanist society we'll be building, and stomping out now, finally coming in, stomping out the truth. That's why this is happening now. There are some other writings in globalist texts that indicate some aspects of like the future of food. If you think back to both 1984 and Brave New World, food is synthetic in both of those novels. And our reality is, it's odd, but it's definitely being pushed towards these weird stories, these dystopic models. Like you said, there's synthetic lab-grown meat, the bleeding burger from Bill Gates, the GMO cow, the Soylent meal replacement powder, the cockroach milk. It's all happening, whether you want it to or not. Yeah. And so the modern globalists, so that's like almost 100 years ago, like 80 years ago for H.G. Wells. You now see modern food games in the last 30 years by the new generation of globalist minions. So John Podesta, who's funded by Soros at the Center for American Progress, had the food chain reaction game, hosting simulations of what climate change is going to do to, invoking a food shock. And always their conclusion is that we need to get rid of the nation state. A global superstate is obviously needed to regulate food and curb CO2 emissions immediately.
Yeah, we need one field of corn.
Mm-hmm.
400 trillion miles across.
And so, yeah, I mean, and it's not
Wasn't it Brawndo in Idiocracy that they watered the crops with and people drank? That was the only liquid on Earth, Brawndo. It had electrolytes.
What plants crave?
Electrolytes.
That's what they Yeah, water like them. Also reminded of Jacques Attali, who's like the French Zabignu. He's Zabignu 2.0. He's doing similar food scarcity conferences and things in France. So this is like top of mind for them. Their messaging is extremely clear. Hunger is coming. We need to get rid of the nation state to fix it. It's the Hegelian problem reaction solution happening right in front of us. So all of these things reinforce, as well as the predictive programming on TV, right? Hunger Games, winter is coming, and all of these things reinforce the GSM. The
sun. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's all there, and I think it's very clear at this point that the ground solar minimum is anticipated, it's expected, and it's in the script. These people who've been crafting and scripting fake news, really, events for some time, are wholly aware of it, and they wholly intend to starve people out, especially in the U.S. I would wager. I think it's a punishment for Trump, for the resurgence of nationalism. It's also the fall of Babylon. This goes deep, right? This is the fall of that nation which was founded on the spiritual truths of the sovereign individual. And boy, that's what they hate most.
Well, we have scientists from the mainstream that are on the show. They're still in the mainstream and employed. Tim Ball, for example. We have more scientists scheduled to be on in the coming weeks. They're not being censored. I mean, they're having a tough time of it. Do you think that everyone is going to be attacked?
Yeah,
at some point.
Wait for it. Yeah, this is imminent.
Judith Curry, she'll be on next week, I hope, or the week after. And she's a very loud voice in the opposite direction.
It will be interesting to see. I don't disagree at all. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But these things everything I've talked about is absolutely true, and it's clear to me that they're going to do anything they can to keep the truth from getting out there. Because if people know, it keeps them from preparing, and they want to maximize the bloodletting in this depopulation event. That's their whole game here.
Yeah, they don't have to do it for much longer because as the events start to unfold, that's what's going to overwhelm the media. There'll be so much chaos to report on that there will be no need for real information. There'll be too much information. And the Hopi called it the quickening. It's been happening for a decade. More and more information is compiled every hour, and our access to it becomes more and more exponential, and it's only going to get bigger. Yeah.
I will add that just looking at just the AGW agenda itself, if you look at it, it's actually a very, even though it's just a component of the larger thing we're talking about, it's extremely Luciferian in nature, right? It's working to elevate man over the power of nature. It's we who control the climate. It's our fault. That's a very what's the word when a man becomes God? I forget the word for it. But it also yeah, exactly. Apotheosis. It's the apotheosis of man. We now control the climate of Earth. It's very self-serving. Yeah, and then obviously it serves the depopulation agenda. It is true to form an inversion, a Luciferian inversion of the truth. They can't help but invert things. We know we're entering a cooling phase, so they introduce global warming and just laugh. You know they're laughing. It's crazy. Yeah, so they're going to continue their song and dance. They're going to keep people's minds off the climate and off the food as long as they can. I would think, if you think it's weird now, I would venture it's going to get even weirder. I think
Indeed. Well, food prices are about to start rising this fall and spiking in the winter, and it's only going to get worse through 2019. It's going to get worse thereafter in 2020. It's anyone's guess how much exponentially worse, but just in a period of a year and a half, there's going to be a food crisis. Not just like the one that they're talking about now, the 40% vegetable food crisis in the EU. This is going to cascade. It's going to continue to roll over onto itself until it becomes a global food crisis in a very short period of time.
An alarmingly short period of time. And it will get weirder. I would expect to see things like 9/11 truth going mainstream, or contact with aliens, or World War III, or economic collapse. Like, all of these things sound today. Just last week, I would not have believed that channels would be starting to get removed from YouTube. So all of these things sound ridiculous, and they sound like they must never be possible. But actually, all of these things are, in fact, literally in the Illuminati card deck. They are literally in the plan. I'm
about to drop a truth bomb on everyone before we go to commercial. Wars are controlled by the sun. Crop loss and famine is controlled by the sun. And when crop loss and famine happens, the wars are the greatest. And this is historical information. This is not a fairy tale that we're making up. This is not a statistical analysis. This is facts that we can go back into the historical record over 2,000 years. And starting as little as in 1400 AD, we have detailed daily grain analysis of production worldwide. It happens time and time again on a 100, 200, and 400-year scale, and they're called solar grand minimas. And that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about preparing to survive and thrive in the future that you're living. And Christian Westbrook is with us, and we're going to do a little 3-minute commercial break where you can all take a little pee-pee break, because that's where I'm headed. Christian, go take a break, put it on mute, and we'll just see in a few minutes.
Said as only Diamond can say it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, peace. And that's a boom. I hear a giggle.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Good evening, folks. This is Diamond, your host tonight for the Inconvenient Truth, Prepping for the Grand Solar Minimum, Part 2. On the line with us tonight is Christian Westbrook, a.k.a. Ice Age Farmer, and we're talking about the globalist agenda, the misinformation, and the quelching of free speech by the powers that be. Excuse me. Now, Christian, are you back from the bathroom?
I don't even know how to answer that question. I'm here.
Okay, The Guardian. This is coming out today. Do not despair, folks. Climate change catastrophe can still be averted. Now, the future looks fiery and dangerous, according to new reports. But political will and grassroots engagement will change this all. Now, I can assure you that there is nothing that can be done politically or through grassroots efforts that will change the climate. As a climatologist, I'm going to go out on a limb here and just tell you the truth, that man does not control the climate, and it's not your fault. Now, let me continue with the nonsense here in this article. This is the summer when, for many, climate change got real. Yeah, really annoying. Now, according to this article, the future is fiery and dangerous. And if you come down to the end of the second paragraph, civilization as we know it will surely not survive. I mean, fantasy land.
But see, this is the removal of all hope from people that I was talking about before. They are fashioning the perfect resistance. They'll do anything because they are just totally bereft. No hope. No future.
Yeah, it says dystopia is easy to envision. For example, Europe is not coping well with modest numbers of migrants, and future flows look likely to increase substantially as migration itself is an adaptation to rapid climate change.
Which is fascinating because what you just said is a true statement, but it's obviously inverted. Again, it's the Luciferian inversion of reality. It's very... very pernicious.
Yeah, so we're back, second hour. What do you want to talk about?
Well, that was kind of a downer. I really don't like to focus on that kind of stuff too much. But as I said, I think it's absolutely vital that we all have that knowledge and possess it and can take it into the future with us. Because not everyone's going to have it, just like not everyone's going to be knowing about what's going on right now before we get there. This is just going to play out and be that as it may. But I wanted to mention, so the flip side, the good thing about everything that I've just described is that in that analysis, when we looked at the people that have access to the real history, to the real data, and who are aware of what's transpiring, they fully plan to push forward with this long-term agenda of theirs. They're not, trying to get off the planet and the world's going to end. They're playing the long game. This world is going to be here, and having prepared and armed yourself with knowledge, so are you. So are we. When you reframe it like that the power grid, these things at some point likely will come back up. And so then the question changes. Do you even want to be on their grid long term? It's just a tool of control, right? Do you even want to be eating their food long term? It's all poisoned. It's GMO, disgusting. And so these are different questions. Now you're making an empowered decision. You're consciously choosing an off-grid, self-sufficient freedom life, right? You're moving that way because it's better, rather than running for our life because we're all going to die. It's very different, and you will get a different result. So you have to focus. I really want to stress that you have to focus.
Many of our subscribers are growing up to 30% of all of their vegetables. That might only be 10% of their food, but that is a start, and it's amazing. Mm-hmm. Because that food, what goes in the soil, that you didn't spray poison on it, and it's going to make you healthier and happier. And just by being healthier and happier, you're going to want to grow more food. And you're going to be saving more money, and you're becoming self-sufficient. When you eat a meal that you made by growing it, it is an amazing feeling, an empowering feeling. And then when you can have vegetables and eggs and milk and bake with your grains, you are in total control of your health and your security at that point.
And it's not just delicious; it's addictive.
It's so nutritious too, because when you grow organically, I mean, commercial farming has depleted the nutrient density by over half in some species. It's that bad since like the initial crops from the 30s. But if you go back to save seed with organic permaculture principles, biodynamic soils, you can increase the nutrient density up to 80% in what you're getting in the grocery store.
Yeah, it's astounding. And I guess looking around over the last few years at all of the progress that's been made in various parts of the world at truly regenerative, not just sustainable, but regenerative agriculture, it's just appalling and painful to realize that the monoculture that's employed en masse is, it's doing awful damage, right?
Yeah, and in the future we're going into, monocropping will probably not be even possible because of the erratic nature of the shifting weather and strange seasons. Monocropping only works when you have stable patterns. That's called solar max, and that ended. That ended a cycle ago, and we're quickly going to depart from any stable farming ever again.
You don't leave much room for argument there. I think it's that's a certainty. One of the things that's most fun then about designing a system that you hope to be productive in the situation you just described, right? You can either say, oh, that sounds hellish and impossible, and I might as well not even try. But if you really get into it, if you embrace this challenge of like, wow, I have to design some system in this space here that could work in a 100-year drought, but that would gracefully be able to accommodate a 100-year flood. Like this is, So now we're talking about some really interesting constraints on how you execute that food production. It has to be resilient in any combination of extremes. Yeah.
Number one question I get: how are you going to protect your crops from hail? And I say you put it in a rigid greenhouse. This is not rocket science. You need a rigid greenhouse that is capable of producing 100% of your food every week of the year in case of emergency. So that's where you start. You need a rigid greenhouse that can feed your family exclusively from it. Now, you might be slightly hungry, but you'll be alive. And that, because to get a 100% crop loss, I've never experienced it. It might be possible in some areas. But generally, the majority of us won't see that. When you have massive hail events, you have 50% losses and then 20% grow back. But if you have a secure, rigid greenhouse, that is where you start. And a lot of people, questions tonight, they want to know, what you're saying. They're in that desperation mode. Is there any hope? Like, what's the point of me going to work? Well, you could change your career. You could sit down for a week and think what the future might bring and change your life over to maybe rigid greenhouses or hail protection or organic farming, small-scale farming. Any of those things are going to be greatly needed in the future we're headed into. What say you?
There's a lot you just said, and I would like to come back to what you ended on, which is like the entrepreneurial mindset and being able to, just being able to identify opportunity and create value and capitalize on that in any situation. And that might not even mean money or economy. That just might mean, how do I become valuable to any group of people I'm with? But I was hoping to first hit, if I can remember what you said. Oh, I don't think, everything you said makes sense, Diamond, but I am extremely reluctant to put that statement out there that a starting point is a rigid greenhouse. That's just not a viable reality for the vast majority of people listening to this program. I would be quick to say that I don't think that's the starting point. I think wherever you are is your starting point.
So if you're in an apartment, your rigid greenhouse is your apartment.
Sure. Exactly.
A lot of people, even the Danish Grand Solar Minimum Channel, he grows food, he grows peppers, he grew this winter peppers, strawberries, and cannabis in a 2x2 closet with 40 watts.
Yeah.
Most people can do that for $30.
Whatever you can imagine is being done by someone very creative out there. And I'm sure you yourself can figure out, given your own constraints, something even more creative and awesome. And dude, I'm telling you right now, I want to see your YouTube video of it when you do it. That's my message to everyone. Your starting point is where you are. And you know, there's lots of prepper literature out there that'll sort of walk you through, like, it seems impossible, but maybe you just buy, you know, one extra can on your next trip to the supermarket of whatever you eat right now. And if you do that every time, then maybe a month later, you start to notice actually you have a week of your groceries, of the normal groceries you had. Do that again. You've got 2 weeks. Add some cooking oils.
The PVC that's in the alley that you've been staring at for a year, that's your hydroponic system for your basement if you can't afford a greenhouse. And then you just need a $20 light from eBay.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Start wherever you are. Start small.
Night, I said rethink possible, not possibility. Anything is possible. Rethink possible, because you're not thinking right now. You know, people back themselves into a corner, and it's not true. Fear is a liar.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful. I hope people are hearing us normalize that. It just happens at times when your mind goes into, it's a monkey mind, right? It goes in wherever it wants to, and sometimes you can listen to it and sometimes you don't. But my mind sometimes goes to places where nothing I do feels adequate or nothing even makes sense, right? I'm like, if I'm dehydrating food, I just have this pernicious voice. How is this ounce of dried corn possibly going to save your family? And it's not. It's not. That's the answer. But I got to keep going. And then the voice says, well, how is this one squash plant that you're planting going to feed my family? Well, it's not. It's not. But I'm going to keep planting. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, because if an event happened, who knows what it is, that there can be no more food in the supermarket, quickly there will be no food in the supermarket. We're talking 24 hours. And then that squash, the single squash you have, becomes invaluable for your health and your security. That's the starting point.
And so again, if you're able to start building up, just double the cans over the weeks, add some cooking oil, you're up to a month of stored food, add some dehydrated food at some point, and then maybe some microgreen seeds so that you have both the dehydrated sort of meal for the sustenance and then the living greens from the microgreens. I'm not describing, and it's clear. I think nobody would hear this and say that's a sustainable future. I'm going to exist for the rest of my life on stored, meals and microgreens. It doesn't even make sense. You don't have that many microgreen seeds. But this can get you through. Yeah, this will get you through a short period of time. And that describes actually the vast majority of experiences that people have to go through. Even personal, the most common emergencies that people actually endure are personal crises. If you lose your job or you get injured and you can't work for some amount of time, and then you can tap into those preps that you've made. So there's kind of like a common sense getting your house in order level of first level prepping, and that might be even where you start.
Yeah, and the common amount of time for a catastrophic event where you need help continuously, there's no resources, up to 3 months on average. That's the average. It can be, in the events we're going into, forever at the extreme, years at the midpoint, but you're always looking to be minimally prepared for 3 months catastrophe to just get by. 3 months of water, 3 months of food, 3 months of light, 3 months of energy, 3 months, 3 months, 3 months. And then to back up, the end game would be 5 years of dry goods supply. If it gets really bad, could you live for 5 more years on what you have? And that would be the end game for your prepping. But a short game could be the 3-month preparedness. Anyone can do that in a short period of time, just a little bit at a time. Have enough preps to live for 3 months should everything shut off.
I'm trying to imagine what 5 years of dried food, but it's like a warehouse.
It's an 8x8 room. No, that's it.
Really?
In an 8x8 room with 4, 5 stainless steel shelves, you could stockpile enough dry goods and candles and batteries and products to get through 5 years.
Yeah.
We're talking included in there is hundreds of pounds of seeds that are going to allow you to grow vegetables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to normalize is I think everybody is resource constrained, and what that means is that we have to make trade-offs, right? There's not Some of those are going to be more difficult than others, but it means there's never a perfect outcome. There's never a perfect situation for me. I think that's true of everyone. I am in an imperfect situation, period. That's the way life actually is. It's not supposed to be perfect, really. So if you take a deep breath when you're suffering one of these, like, it doesn't matter how much corn I dehydrate, take a breath, try to be more comfortable with the imperfection of life, because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and if you can only afford a 50-cent can of beans, someone else might need that, and you might need something they have. So there is not necessarily the perfect list of items that you can prepare for or with, because there is no way to predict how it will unfold in your area. So never be down on yourself. Every single component is a win and a step forward to survive and thrive in the future. And to be resilient, I don't plan to ever eat any of my preps. I intend to be so bulletproof and self-sufficient here that my preps will be used as bartering tools in a grid down scenario. I will have such abundance here. Now, when I'm making videos at night, Christian, I get up at 9 a.m. and I go to sleep at 3 a.m. every day. I'm working that whole time. While I'm making the videos, while the video is parsing at midnight, I go out to the greenhouse with a headlamp and I water more food than I could possibly eat. And I don't need it, but I'm preparing, because by being abundant, by having more than I need, everyone that comes in there can eat as many tomatoes as they want. And I'm sharing the abundance to show what's possible if you're driven. Now, I'm insane, and I'm working twice as hard as most humans are willing to do. But I just want to show what's possible. Because at some point, I'll have so much abundance here, I can take a vacation. I can sit down and just be amongst the abundance. And that time is coming soon as I build every day. Just like you say, what steps are you taking?
Yeah. Well, you and I spoke about this when I visited you, actually. And you were saying that you definitely are like balls to the wall, and that you enjoy that. And so that's great. I'm glad that works for you. I would also offer for a lot of other people, yes, we will, like you said, we will need to push ourselves. You are going to have to work hard. That's just the reality. It's hard work to survive on this planet. But the part of it has to be, it's not just part of it has to be, and part of the challenge of prepping is to still enjoy life, even as you prepare. And so I think that's really... I
enjoy being busy, and I'm a workaholic, so that's what I enjoy doing, because I enjoy the creation aspect.
Yeah, so I'm glad that works for you, and I'm just suggesting, because there are plenty of people for whom this is not like the best or the most enjoyable use of their time.
If you're not one of those super driven people and you want to know innovative ways to survive and thrive in the future, I suggest one of the most impactful books for many people, and it's called The One Straw Revolution. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with it?
I am. It's great, yeah.
It's Masanobu Fukuoka, and he developed farming practices which are less is more. So the less you do, the more you get, and he likes to enjoy what he does. So it's a really good book if you're thinking that that's your style. I would totally recommend you go check out The One Straw Revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka. Do you have any other good tips or like totally changing books that you read that you think the public should probably read?
That's a great one. I'm devouring the entire world of Korean natural farming right now. I was just doing the video about lactobacillus, and this week actually have been making some of the fermented plant extracts, the FPEs, which I knew formerly as floating point air. It's funny that these things carry over. I really recommend the PDC, the permaculture design class, because I think that just encompasses a lot of fantastic information and somehow succeeds at packaging it in a way that manages to change a lot of the way, or at least challenge a lot of the ways that we've all been indoctrinated to see things in society. Is really helpful.
Yeah, and the reason I embraced it a decade ago, the permaculture principles, is that they were revealed to me through my struggles and my awakening period. Those principles, when I read them, were antithetical to what we're being told. And they all make sense as a whole, that you really need to not be focused like a laser beam, but be focused on the perimeter, because that's where opportunity is, and that's where growth is, and that's where you learn, on the edges.
Yeah, so folks can check out Chris Trump's channel. He does a great job of making some of that Korean natural farming knowledge more accessible. The permaculture stuff, I think even if you do your PDC, just that whole community, like the Permies.com site and some of those forums are incredible resources for looking into the experiences that people have designing in various environments and seeing how they handle the extremes that we're anticipating, right? So we mentioned I need to handle floods and droughts and be able to produce in either. One thing that I've been doing with, I've been planting an orchard, and I've been using some sunken mulch pits with a ton of organic matter in there to hold water in there. And that's, as I was saying, in case there's a drought, I need these things to be able to sustain. And I forget what they called it, but I saw this idea for a grid. It's like a grid network in your orchard. So this is what I've been working on, where you've got these deep mulch pits, but then you'd actually dig trenches, a little bit shallower trenches on contour in between all these pits, all these trees. So they actually share irrigation between them. And you fill those trenches with lots of good organic matter and stuff like that. And it becomes, when the water is moving back and forth, it becomes like this nutrient sharing kind of a rich compost tea thing. And it's really cool. So, but awesome. that's the whole thing. I hope, but now the game is, how does it work, right? It's going to be, give me 3 or 4 years and I'll let you know if it's working. These things take time to play out. And so you got to get started now. But I think the permaculture world is a wealth of information and experience.
Yeah, we've lost a lot. I've had total losses again and again, but we've had successes. We have our first apples being produced, first Macintosh apples, Jonah Mac apples, our first pears, our first plums, our first cherries, our first gooseberries, on, and it's year 3. And I can only imagine what we're going to have next year. I keep planting. I keep going. 80% dies over here, but I'm like, I never expected that to be amazing. And so you leave that and you have a new palette to replant other things, and you keep going. And eventually, in 10 years of this continued process of planting and planting and planting, you have an amazing system, and you learn as you go. And it's unique to every piece of land. So
yeah. But what's not unique is that when you work with nature, right? When you adopt those principles, then you get amazing results. And it's just like it's more than a multiplicative factor. It's just amazing. It's surprising. I love it.
Yeah, last year the whole front orchard looked like crap and was being attacked by bugs. That's because we didn't have enough of the forest biome in there yet in 2 years. This year it looks much better because the forest has moved in, year 3. So year 4 is going to be even more thick and abundant with native species, and just add layer after layer after layer. We're creating cooler temperatures out front in the desert. We're creating shade. This is not normal. We're creating a new environment.
Greening the desert, as they say, yeah.
Yeah. It can be done.
Yeah, it's Jeff Watton's whole project, right? So, and then on the aquaponics front, I built a couple of those systems. That's sort of where I go for the in-structure growing at this point. Outside, I've been dealing with a lot of high UV problems, because I get messages from subscribers who are dealing with the same thing. I don't know what your experience is, but things getting burned that were doing fine in previous seasons. So I had to shut up some shade cloth to try and cut down on that. It's worked a little bit better.
Yeah, indeed, shade cloth is the way to go. It's the only way they can grow in some parts of southern Arizona. And I've experienced burn depending on it's low humidity, low moisture, and then some of the shard will get burned. So it's a bunch of different effects, but anything you put a shade cloth on should react much better in those burn situations. So think shade cloth with this new thin waning magnetosphere, increased cosmic radiation, and other radiation elements, UVA, UVB, UVC. There's hundreds of others. We're just talking about a few. It's increased across the spectrum. A lot of people are like, why does it feel so hot? Because it's increased radiation across the spectrum that we're being exposed to.
Yeah, a lot of people say the sun seems wider, but which is like, it's one way of saying it, but to see the numerical data was a lot more confirming of that. Yeah, and then another thing, so some tribulations here that I wanted to mention in terms of failed experiments, I guess you could call them. I had started some mushroom logs, and they were doing great in my previous location, which makes sense. Our house was getting afflicted with black mold. There's another reason we had to make a move quick. It was a very wet location without much sun, and so the mushroom logs obviously loved that. And I've sort of switched to the opposite end of the spectrum here. They're way too dry. I think it's hard to keep them sufficiently damp to get them to fruit here, at least during the summer.
You could try putting big basins of water around.
Yeah, no, I've got them. I've got them in there under the aquaponics tables.
Okay.
Just to milk it all, but it's just too hot in there right now.
So we got about 30 minutes left. Let's talk about your move. You moved away from the coast, San Fran. You're hours in. You're far away from major cities, I would hope.
So here's one. Of course, absolutely. That's the whole point.
Okay.
I somewhat ironically had moved. It's really close. Could see it from our front door last year to the Santa Rosa fires, which were pretty remarkable. And so that was way too close to home. This year, we find ourselves in the plumes of smoke from these Northern California wildfires. In fact, I was gonna say that.
We're covered in smoke. You can't see the mountains here, and they're from those fires all the way out here.
So that's amazing, just in the fact that it's happening, and then like as an example also of the way that secondary effects and tertiary effects of these things that you don't expect can affect your growing. Because of the smoke, and it makes the sun crazy red during the morning and the night. Because of this, all of my plants perceive a decrease in darkness, which means they think that the days have gotten shorter. And so a lot of my plants went into flowering like over the course of the last week or two, just because they think it's late fall all of a sudden.
Oh my God, your cannabis grow is totally fluxed.
And a lot of my neighbors and folks in this area that's the revenue. That's the a big, so to speak, cash crop. So this is
we have fires. I experienced that with one of our plants. We got a nice clones in, and one of them, Big Jim, it flowered immediately, and we're talking in still June 21st. So that is a problem when it is a cash crop.
Yeah.
Highly reduced yields.
And just an example. It's not just the hail, so there's fire or crazy things. That could be I guess most people think of these problems from volcanic ash, but just the wildfire smoke can set that kind of stuff off.
So are you renting? Did you buy this place? Is it 10 acres, 5 acres, 3 acres?
I have just enough space to feel pretty comfortable and for operational security reasons. And I'm going to probably leave it at that. But it's really, this is the first place I've ever owned, and it was obvious that I needed to own something because it was getting crazy to like only have containers and just you especially sensing the need to start to create these systems and learn. I was going crazy before, so it's been great to get out here and even as I said, with an imperfect situation, and it is certainly that. To start learning and building and just seeing where it goes. The focus. The rule of threes dictates that the first focus is water, right? That's what we need to secure first. And so, but did a lot of work on putting in a cistern and just augmenting both the storage and sort of the whole processing of water, the water system here, which is fun because you take some of these designs, some of these ideas to folks that just do the same thing over and over. They build systems for just a well plumber or whatever, and you say, hey, I've got this idea. I want to have my rainwater collected over here, but it's got to be a hybrid system that can also pull water from the well. And they start to get excited. So it's kind of fun sometimes to actually try and bring some of these things to fruition.
Yeah, we just acquired 4 acres to the east, those fenced properties I was telling you about, and there's extreme slope, but they're all meadow. So I could literally set up a pond system and get about 60 foot of drop from the top to the bottom and create, micro hydro in between powering small systems. and then recycle the water using solar power back to the top cistern. So these ideas, have been developing. We still don't have our house secured, so we're really pushing on that, because we're renting over, and we're building a house, and it's becoming a nightmare. And I'm feeling the need to have a home base, so to speak, and then the real creativity can begin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would just encourage people to start pushing down the stack, right? Look at what you use every day and start to try and imagine how you could generate that yourself, how you could grow that yourself or create it yourself. And, when you then get to, I eat these eggs, so I'll need some chickens. Well, what do I feed the chickens? Some of this. I'll need to grow that, or I'll need to find some other way to obtain these things. And you keep chipping away. Just keep working. And there is no 100% solution. Here it is. Here you're done. Because we're humans. We're dealing with nature. This is life. It's always been this way. You can't possibly anticipate everything. But you just keep working, keep chipping away. You learn the lessons from these people who have spent generations, right? Learning like the Korean natural farming, biointensive, the permaculture. These people have put many lifetimes, and we can stand on the shoulders of giants when we...
Yeah, if you want to know how to can, ask an old lady.
Yeah.
Just like sauerkraut. Some woman showed me how to make sauerkraut in 3 minutes.
And it's very simple. All of it is so simple, right? Which is really encouraging, but you just have to learn it. You just got to get through it a couple times. And I learned that rule from string cheese farms in Sonoma County. They said 50% of everything we grow is for us, right? It's for humans. But 50%, and it seemed really high to me to say 50% of everything we grow is for the land. But that's the way they do it. And when you start I guess when you stop, I should say, going off-site to pull in your nutrients and your organic matter and all of these things, then it starts to make sense. So you've got to have, some of these chop and drop crops. Some of these things are going to make the fermented plant extracts. A lot of these things are just biomass, and getting an appreciation for it and then spinning it up, getting this cycle of nutrients and energy and life flowing through a new space is fun. And it takes time, and it will present challenges to which you will need to come up with creative solutions, but it's fun. It's good. It's where we are now. And it's very, I think it's fundamental to who we are. I think cultivation touches something deep within us as people, as humans. It's hard to explain.
It connects us with source. It's who we used to be. It's how we used to provide. It's how we were one with nature, with the earth. We were, we were working in harmony. There is no evidence that past cultures created large piles of trash that we filled holes with. They were thoughtful races. And they're now being controlled by an evil entity. And it doesn't matter who that is or who controls the narrative. They're taking us away from who we are as humans. They're stripping us of our humanity.
Yeah. All true. And I guess I come back. I think the biggest challenge, I'll speak personally, the biggest challenge most of the time I feel like I face is, as I said, making sure to enjoy life, even though I'm doing everything I need to do to get ready for the times ahead. And I don't mean just enjoying it, like having a good time. I mean the art of in fact, living life sort of in two different worlds, right? It's temperance, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Spending time every day with my son because he's just awesome, but also pushing forward with those daily steps. So it's not, a to-do item that I can check off and call it done. Having achieved perfect balance. It's a daily practice. And I guess the main reason I share that is because I know there are other people striking similar balances, and I want that to feel normal. Yeah.
So now this is a good transition to a few questions. This is from Robert Nestrick. His question is for both of us. Is any of your families on board and preparing for the hard times ahead, or are they just droning along as if nothing were changing anytime soon? This person has been searching and prodding the family and friends to no avail, and they feel quite isolated. Now, I'll give you my perspective. I know my brother probably watches the channel very infrequently. He knows that I have the channel, and he's my brother, so he may check in on me by watching that. But I also know that he's indoctrinated into global warming, and him and his family are in South Florida, in a terrible place to be. And yeah, he's not doing anything. So, and other relatives and people I know probably not doing anything.
Yeah, Rob, I think it's a really good question because it strikes right to the heart of like exactly striking that balance and how do you continue to exist even in these two different worlds. I hear from people on all sides of the spectrum, right? With people like couples that are totally on board together, and that's actually fantastic to see. I think really encouraged to see these people who are like coming to these realizations and then really just like becoming a power couple and facing these problems together is awesome. It's rare. It's very rare. By and large, usually I hear from folks who, as you're saying, Rob, don't get a lot of traction with the people in their life. And I think that's why I started up the channel and the forum.iceagefarmer.com is because it's just so important for us to be able to reach out and have normal, healthy conversations about, in fact, what is happening right now, and not to feel alone with our families or the people that we happen to physically be surrounded by while we live in these two different worlds.
Yeah, excellent answer. And so as far as I'm concerned about my family or anyone that knows of the channel, they know what I'm doing. They know why I came out here: self-sufficiency, an experiment in high alpine sustainability, and to prepare for the changes that are going to happen on Earth in my lifetime. Now, if they don't believe it, that's fine. But if they watch these events unfold in a catastrophic way, they also know where I'm at. So simply allowing them to know my position is enough, I think. I don't need to shove it down their throat. They can believe everything opposite, and when they're ready to believe, or they're ready to come out here because Florida's underwater, you know, at least they know my position, and I think that's where you're at as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would say this applies both to anybody in the world, everybody at large, as well as your own family, that if you try to bludgeon them to death with anything, it's just going to not get you anywhere. So making them, you know, briefly and politely and unemotionally aware of what's going on, and then stepping back, because once they've heard that, when they look out into the world and see what we're seeing, I mean, this is a different conversation than we would have had a year ago, where you're still saying, look, there are cycles of history and we're entering into this, and we're going to see these things. No, it's happening already. Half the crops failed. It's not, it's a different conversation now. And so I think we can, in fact, be a little gentle with the facts, so long as they are heard, and then just wait for the gears to turn and the realizations to fall in line. And that's been my experience.
Indeed. Let's go to a question from Stoic God. It's a given that most people will not bug out or know how to grow food at all. And that's true and sad. A lot of those will die early from dysentery, and especially people in major urban areas if grid just goes down for long periods. We're talking urbanites, city dwellers. And if they stay in these regions and it's long periods of time with grid down, there will be access to farmland. All you have to do is, you know, go out to the outskirts, or there's, 40,000 vacant lots in Philly. The question is, what's the quickest, easiest, most nutritious plants these people should start growing? And what should these seeds they should be stockpiling? You know, if I was going to say something, I would say the easiest stuff to grow in those types of conditions would be brassicas. You get the most nutritious, the quickest food. You can stockpile pounds and pounds of brassica seeds in the form of kales, shards, and other leafy greens that are very nutrient dense. But you should be stockpiling dry goods like rice. I think that's a critical life extender. You can add leafy greens to rice and pretty much survive and thrive for years. Some animal protein now and then if you're raising animals, but you can also shoot wild birds and wild game in urban environments. There are animals to be eaten. And do you have any tips? And how's your answer for Stoic God? Yeah,
I don't know how long those animals are going to hang out before they're hunted out, but I think that's a good answer. And then I would add, I'm a fan of the root crops. We're talking like turnips, radishes, things that especially those things that you're able to eat the leaves as they grow, and then have a tuber at the end of the season, which gives you something hopefully that you can store for a bit throughout the the colder season and try and bridge that hunger gap. So I think that's important. I've also, and one of the things I love doing, and to my earlier question to you, Diamond, one of the sources that I go to for hope, right, is tales from folks on the frontier, and like just the idea that people have done this before and we're fine, right? It's very to normalize the idea of someone being self-sufficient, because it seems so foreign and crazy now. So just to go back and read when everyone was doing that, and there are plenty of folks who did it in all sorts of ways. But a very common one was potatoes, because they're just so easy to take with you, and you put them in the ground when you get there, and after one season, you've got a huge, a much bigger crop, and that can literally then bootstrap you through a second season. So maybe add that
5 or 10 pounds of different species of potatoes just in 3-gallon market pots in the garage through the winter. It gets -10 here. And then through the spring, and they're still viable. I plant them. It's insane. You can store tubers if you were traveling for hundreds of miles. They are just the way to go. And then you plant them, and, just a few months, you've got more tubers. So, yeah, it's number one thing. And as far as the root crops, turnips, beets, parsnips, rutabaga, as you pick the leaves, you're actually fattening the root, and it's a win-win. The leafy greens on root vegetables are typically not consumed by Americans or anyone in the globe. It's insane. They're the most nutritious part, but together the leafy green and the root component have such incredible nutritional value, broad-based spectrum. I mean, the root crop is basically drawing in the mineral nutrient from the dirt directly. The green portion, the aerial portion, is a leafy green, A, C, E, just an amazing way to survive. Now, a lot of people that come to the farm here that want to help and prep, and there's a couple guys here right now. They're camping in the national forest, but they don't even want to eat any of the food we're growing here. They want me to make them pizza, and they want to get sandwiches at the store. What say you to that? That's the way most people are eating. How are they going to make the transition?
Well, it's going to be a rough one from there.
No chicken nuggets.
Yeah, this is something that. So I think once the motivation is there, then I think this is an easier transition. But this is something that I've described as meeting yourself in the middle, which is to say that I was just mentioning a second ago, the idea for most folks of growing all of your food is just incomprehensible. It's just absurd, even to think to mention it to someone.
Well, this is Scott here. I have to jump in now.
Hey, Scott.
Okay.
Are you guys telling me there won't be air conditioning?
Yeah, there is. 6 feet down, it's always 54. It's always 54.
Excellent. Yeah, I was just going to jump in and let you know one of my things I'm working on this week, and I already have my light fixtures. I bought some lights from a fellow back east. This Brad, he's got a place, True Leaf is his place, and he's got these lights that work. Or True Leaf is where I was getting the microgreens from, yeah. And Brad's was at Hidden Harvest, and I like his lights because they don't. A lot of these lights you get, they got blowers on them that just sound terrible, sound like a PC on steroids, and then they got all these purple lights on them, and you can't live in the same room as some of these.
You'll go blind.
And so this one fellow that I got my lights from, he's got a nice little, it's like about a 2x2 square light fixture, and I went up and I have I think it was $100 for this shelf that you put together, and it has 4 levels on it. And so he said, just kind of the lower half is for bigger plants, and then you bring the shelves up and you have a middle and a 3/4 level shelf, and then the top shelf, and you just mount the lights under the top shelf, and then the next shelf down and the next shelf down. So you had just have a couple of lights on each level. So, so it was only $100 for this, real nice. It was like 2 feet deep at 4 feet wide, 6 feet tall. So it's a very large area that, I can have running all the time. And then I had talked to, I think I think I got this from our friend over at Adapt 2050 or 2030. I'm sorry, and it was this True Leaf, and they had I got both a kit to get learning how to do this microgreens and sprouting, and they included some stuff, and there was a so the one kit has a wheatgrass, a barley grass, and a sunflower that are supposed to be really nutritious. So, this kind of goes back to some people that don't have property and they're living in the city and they want to get their hands wrapped around growing something. Nice little stand like this. You can get some tomato plants started on the lower level. Some taller plants. I'm going to get some peas and stuff going on the backside of it, and then the upper shelves. I'll just get going with the microgreens, and then I gotta just get some simple jars for getting the sprouting going and learning that. So I think that'd be a real good place to get started and get your hands around farming if you don't have any land. If you're just in a city, you just need a corner of one of your rooms and you can have this nice setup.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's how I got my hands dirty was just with a few trays of microgreens and watching those sunflowers and radishes, and you can't help but get a sense for the way these things are sprouting, and then they get moldy if it's too wet or they dry out. Yeah. So you start to play the game. You start to enter that cycle of learning and feedback and observing the plants, and that's where it is. That's the whole game.
Yeah, you can't learn without trial and error. And if you don't even have a lot of money, $100 to buy Scott's system, you can go to a store and get some shop lights for $10 that are fluorescent, make your own shelves, and literally buy some aluminum pans for $1 at the supermarket, line them with sunflower seeds and some wet paper towels, and start sprouting for just $20 in a large way. You could sprout enough sunflower seeds, every day you put out 2 square feet, that you could potentially live on that alone. And the problem is you need more sunflower seeds. So what you would have to do is then do a summer crop, grow sunflowers to full size, and learn how to seed save. So all this is a learning curve. There are so many steps in how to keep this going.
Definitely.
Which is actually
able to buy bulk sprouting seeds forever.
Yeah, it's much easier. It's entirely possible and easy. I mean, it's the sunflower, right? You've seen sunflower seeds are huge, and you just run your head over the huge flower heads and they pop out. That's one of the easier seeds to save. I do think it's hard to get a sufficiently large crop to keep a tray of sunflower microgreens coming out at any good frequency, but it's worth doing.
You would need a half an acre of sunflower.
Wow, yeah.
To sprout all year.
Yeah. So again, this goes back to what we were saying. These are things that can help us, because having a living green in your diet is vital. And so if this is one of the ways that you can bridge the hunger gap for the first couple of difficult seasons that you're getting started up, I mean, these are all great tools to have on hand.
Yeah, another thing, when I was talking to Brad over at the light fixture place, he was a thing that he was really into was pemmican, and he was talking to me about his recipes that he has for that, and how it's very important to get the suet, the darker brown fats, and that those they'll last a lot longer than just a liquid oil or something, and
which goes rancid.
Yeah, and so you put it in the pemmican, you put it in with the meat, and you dry it and put it all together, and it'll stay for months, if not years, he said. So it's if you had, and it's especially when you get into this diet of the future, you need fats in your diet. You can't you can't just live on greens. A lot of nutrition comes from greens, but your body will switch back to caveman mode, and it will be running not on carbs but on on fats, which it was originally designed for. So the pemmican, I would recommend everybody just look that up, and very simple to make. I mean, it's just simply, take some meat, dry it out, shred it, stir in the fat, the proper fat, and, bake it together, and it'll last forever.
And actually, like you mentioned, that was what our bodies were meant to work on. I don't want to open the whole keto debate can here, but I actually just think it's important to say, like, you have to know what your body runs on or what you feel best when you eat. If it's not keto, if it is, whatever that is, but you need to know. And this is part of, as I said, meeting yourself in the middle, because if you're just eating frozen pizzas every day, then you don't even know what to grow. You have nowhere to go to start growing your own food. You have to, that's what I mean, meet yourself in the middle. You're going to start growing those microgreens and you'll start eating them. And then you'll find out actually you like them, or maybe you don't, and you start growing some other kind or something else. Whatever it is, you start moving in both directions, and you stop eating those processed foods and start integrating your homegrown stuff. And again, it's the chipping away. There is no 100% overnight solution. You just chip away, and gradually, it's like you said, Diamond, gradually, you find suddenly 40 to 50% of your food is coming from your backyard. It's fantastic.
Our box freezer has like 50 pounds of pork fat, organic pork fat, which could be critical in the future. You can render that fat. You can keep it on the shelf. You can make it into soap, candles. You can cook with it. You can drink it and survive. Shackleton's group lived on hoosh, which was whale blubber, exclusively. They not only used it to heat, it was in their stoves, but they also heated it and drank the actual stove oil. And they lived on this for almost a year, the hoosh. So animal fats are critical. If you have a small-scale farm, I highly recommend a pig or a breeding pair, because the resources you can get from that are phenomenal. Any other tips from you, Christian?
Actually, I was thinking about something completely different, which is that I do think among the distractions headed our way, or the trials sort of ancillary to the climate, is almost certainly the economic difficulties. If it's not just baked into the script, and I would suggest that it is, then it will flow from the loss of agriculture and the carryover effects from all of these things and not working out. So acknowledging that these economic troubles are lined up in front of us and they will be allowed to transpire, I think it's also a means of stripping people of their funds so they can't get prepared. So it's all part of that same thing. I don't really give investment advice, and if I were, it would be invest in your skills. It'd be what I said tonight: invest in your skills, invest in your perennial polyculture food production systems that you do need, right? They do need the investment up front, and then they will produce, hopefully, as a sustainable system does from then on. Invest in your water and your food preservation systems, squirrel things away. But it's also worth just mentioning this. Like, I saw a video from Sean Hackett, who's the guy who runs, he's got Hackett Financial Advisories. He was the guy that appeared. Yeah, he appeared on the AgWeb interview and said, these sunspot cycles mean we're entering a world of food scarcity. That's how we know of him. But he did a breakdown. It was one of his public videos that did a breakdown of the coffee market and just said, look, based on what's going on, this is about to pop. The fundamentals are there, and given the expectations of crop failures, it's a no-brainer. So if you have tons of money that for whatever reason you can't invest in the other things we've been talking about, well, first of all, become a Patreon subscriber for Oppenheimer Ranch Project and for Ice Age Farmer. And then you could really consider putting some of these monies into the, like the wheat ETFs or the coffee ETNs. And that's a way, without even having to mess with the whole futures market, you can gain some exposure to these ag asset classes. And I obviously I think these things are going to increase in prices. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, I know the market isn't rational, right? It's controlled, and maybe they just manipulate things like crazy. But it seems to me like it's going to be hard to hide what's going on as we move forward. So just thought I would throw that out there.
Historical information is commodities are going to spike from now to 2024. It's guaranteed. Armstrong Economics is going long on oats in 2019. David Dubine, on and on. You can find the right guys that know what's going to happen. And I really would recommend what you just said. Get a group, an ETN fund in the ag circles. Look at what's going up right now that has lots of good grain crops or things that are going to fail, and put 10% of your money in there. And then when it gets huge, take it out, pay your taxes, and use that gain for preps. Because when Bitcoin hits 50,000, I'm getting out. and trust me, I'm buying preps. I'm going to buy truckloads of solar panels, Edison iron batteries, things that will be worth money in the future we're headed into.
That's right. Yeah, because that's all funny money until you can hold it or eat it. At this point.
Yeah, 5 minutes left. Do you have a little synopsis? Tell people where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Boy, I think we covered the gamut tonight. People can absolutely find me at iceagefarmer.com. And as I mentioned, the brand spanking new forum.iceagefarmer.com. And of course on YouTube. I am really glad that you asked me to come on tonight. It's been great. And I am thrilled to have gotten off my chest the huge amount of information that I just was entirely compelled to deliver tonight. It was impressed upon me the importance of doing it. And it is. I'm not, flapping my gums. I think it's absolutely critical. These things are urgent. That's happening now. We are going to see. It is imminent. They're already calling. Yeah, they're already calling for these channels to be removed. And so if you've got, mad tech skills, if you know any awesome blockchain devs, maybe reach out. Maybe we can set something up that's going to guarantee that this information, which is vital, I maintain, will remain available.
Blockchain.
Yeah, whatever it takes, because that's where we are now, folks.
I want a diamond coin. What say you, Scott?
There's actually something out there. It's I don't know if we can get it quite yet. It's called Food Coin. It's mostly out of Eastern Europe, but it's spread in Europe. It's called Food Coin of all things.
Of all things.
Yep.
Let's go to the moon. Yeah, I don't know. The fun. I guess I would just close by reminding ourselves that the fundamental reality here is that it's a spiritual experience that we're all having.
Yeah.
And you can either just kind of like begrudgingly resist it and like point at what hurts and say, "Ow," and I can't do it because of that, or you can really get into the part and look around and see what's going on and get into these hidden histories and really push forward on what's going on here and manifest in the process. I think you'll find that you create your wildest dreams. It's a virtuous cycle. Get on board.
Amen to that. And don't allow fear to guide you. Fear is a liar. If you want to survive and thrive in the future, you need to think different than you have forever. Because up until now, we were coming out of the last cool period. Everything was fine. That's how we developed modern agriculture. It's called solar maximum. It's how Rome developed. It's how the Minoan culture developed. It's how modern society and technology developed. And the historical record has showed us time immemorial that the future we're headed into, as the sun shuts down, ends the empire model. It's not good for humanity because they're not prepared. They're never prepared. It seems like we're all prepared in the middle when things are getting good, but once things are good, we get lazy. And lazy is a liability these days. There are ways to survive and thrive in the future if you think outside the box. We dropped some hints today. We're going to be having more. Hopefully, we're going to be doing something in Salvage, Texas in the spring where we can share knowledge on how to upcycle, how to be self-resilient. Darby's been working on it for a decade. He has his own city. They pass their own laws there. That's the way we need to be in the future. It is called anarchy, but it doesn't mean everyone blows things up and shoots guns. It means decisions are made locally for the benefit of everyone. And that's the future we're headed into. If you think positive and think that this is an opportunity, you're going to be some of the first people that are going to reveal the abundance associated with this new paradigm. There are things that Christian and I can't think about that you can think about, things that will be necessary in the future we're headed into. And we're going to continue to document the facts as they unfold before your very eyes and before your very lies. And Christian, will you come back regularly, like maybe every other month as we progress to update us on how your project's going?
I look forward to having those conversations.
Yeah, excellent. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in tonight. It's been an excellent conversation. I want to thank Scott, who's been eavesdropping in the background, always creeping us out when he pops in. And I want to thank you, the listener, and freedomslips.com, which is Revolution Radio, for letting us have this dialogue. This will be one area that I think will be one of the last things standing, because Revolution Radio is based on alternative dialogue. So they're not going to shut us down here. We'll always have the Wednesday show for as long as internet radio exists. And that's a guarantee. You can find Oppenheimer Ranch on YouTube, where we just went over 30,000 subscribers, and we're growing just as fast as we have since the very first week. There's been no shift. It's not exponential. It's just a steady angle, straight up, just like the hockey stick. And it has nothing to do with global warming. I want to thank Christian Westbrook. It's been an awesome conversation.